Nah, go ahead.
Yo, listen, man. Listen, how this show comes together is always so interesting, man. We have such a loaded show full of information, full of dope stuff to be able to talk to you guys about. Stumble upon this week rejection therapy. Rejection therapy. And we're explaining it for y'all, man. We're breaking it down for y'all. Miles Xavier, you seem all sorts of ready to dive into rejection therapy. What is rejection therapy?
So it's actually, I guess it could be called like a game, right? It's a real life game where you set yourself up to be rejected by another person at least once every single day, right? So that could be asking, making a strange request at a store. That could be asking for something from a friend or family member, maybe somebody that lives in your household that you know they probably ain't gonna do, but you set yourself up to be rejected at least once a day. It's a concept created by Canadian entrepreneur Jason Comely. And basically, he had challenged people to approach strangers with weird requests to build their resilience against rejection.
I'm not mad at it.
I I get it as a concept, uh, but I have questions. Uh, First of all, does it work? Are you truly facing rejection if you make rejection the goal? You know what I'm saying?
So that's an interesting way to put it. If you make rejection the goal, well, I'll tell it to you like this, right? Jason Comey very well came out of a difficult divorcing situation, and I knew it when this topic came across our writing table. I, I had a feeling of where this all stems from, and I knew it had something related to him wanting to be able to overcome the rejection of speaking to women. The statistics that I couldn't find is the level of rejection that men feel specifically when talking to women. It's got to be through the roof. It's got to be through. Dare I say, that's a majority of the rejection that people fear.
Romantic rejection is what you're saying.
Romantic, sure. Miles, how about, man? You're famously known to be super smooth with the women. Tell us how you've approached overcoming rejection.
Yo, I think anybody who ever was famously smooth with the women stopped being so, or like it cancels out as soon as somebody says it like that. Like it's a wrap. So thank you for ending whatever smoothness I might have had. But I think okay, so I think there's a lot of layers here. I think first of all, I think in Western culture at least, men tend to face more rejection in a romantic sense because we've set up courtship, even in a modern sense, right, in a way that women will typically wait and respond to advances by men. And increasingly, we're getting more specific about what is an acceptable advance by a man. But I think that sets, in my research, I discovered and found that evidence to support that yes, men face that romantic rejection more often than females do. So there's that layer to it. But I think this can apply to so many different things, right? I was wondering where the romance angle would come into this conversation, and I ain't mad at it coming in very early, but I think specifically when we get to the romance and the way that men pursue women, there's like this important thing I kept coming across in the research that like men get more used to hearing no, right? But to me, that's deep, right? To me, that's deep because it's like, are we hearing no and being desensitized to no vis-a-vis the lack of safety women feel in engaging with men that we're hearing from women? Are we and then it's like it's a double, it's like, so sure, men are more likely to hear no. And even in business spaces, we know, or there's evidence to support that men are more likely to ask for a raise, right? And stuff like that. But there's like this also this unspoken set of rules that make women feel like they can't even ask, even like in the dating relationship, like that they're set up to receive and then they get to decide. right? So I think it's important to just look at those structures when we, because like, what does it mean to be rejected in advance? You know what I'm saying? From that romantic angle, from just from the setup that society is rejecting the idea of you being the person who asks.
So what Miles is saying is, ladies, look, say yes. You know, go out. Nah, but on a more serious note, taking it a bit deep, what this rejection therapy leans on is the is some therapeutic practices known as exposure therapy, which is usually given to folks that have experienced that have phobias or traumas, which is you expose yourself towards those elements and then increase your brain's capacity to being able to handle those things. So specifically, if you are afraid of heights, slowly it's slowly increasing the places where you face that fear and then confront it, because a lot of fear is ingrained in is ingrained in ignorance and is ingrained in a hyper a hyper imagination. A lot of fear is ingrained in a hyper imagination. So is hate. A lot of hate is ingrained in hyper ignorance at the same time. But what's particularly interesting that I found, and this is something that Eckhart Tolle speaks about, something that you all know I spoke about too, if you get into the chemistry of the brain, is that from an anthropological perspective, we getting anthropological on y'all. We getting
Okay.
anthropological on y'all. Come
Okay.
on, man. Come on. I swear down. Swear down. Um, this is interesting, right? A MRI showed that your brain, the same area of your brain that is reacted when you're in physical pain, is also triggered when you're rejected. And so anthropologists tie this back to the fact that um, from thousands of years of when we say back in the day, we're talking way back in the day. Like we're talking,
Word.
yeah, you know, we're talking the primitive places. If you were rejected by your group of people, you were ousted from the group, you could die.
Mm-hmm.
You had no protection, you had no coverage, and you had no ability to get food. And so over time, the brain has linked that pain of rejection to make sure that you avoid that situation so you can stay within the group. You know, the brain has a very simple way to be able to react to things. If it's very bad and can kill you, it makes it painful. If it's not very bad and can't kill you, then you know it'll slide through. But then how that shows itself now is that that same trigger point of rejection is still there, so you can literally feel physical pain when you get rejected.
That's very interesting to me, right? Like, and I think that yeah, that gives context to what it means to be rejected. But I also think the idea of rejection therapy is to understand that we also face rejections in everyday sense, or at least a fear of rejection that might even keep us from asking things. And so, in the ways in which we're not putting our lives at risk, right? No longer in a modern sense, right? In that same lack of like resources, like shelter, survival sense, in everyday rejection. To expose yourself to it in small measures so that you build up a resistance to it and you get comfortable maybe taking up more space, and especially for people that struggle to ask for help, right? I think there's a really, when you struggle to ask for help, when you have this deep rooted fear of being rejected, sometimes it makes it really hard to communicate your needs, right? And I think that for people that really struggle with that, this might be a good thing to consider. Now, on the flip side, I have an issue with using your everyday interactions with people as a game, as like a challenge. You know what I'm saying? Because not everybody has time for that. You know what I'm saying? In their day. So I don't know. When you think about, because like we talked about Jason Comey earlier, right? But the dude we actually have pulled up, shout out to Hassan, is Jia Jang, who took this idea further and created like basically 100 challenges for himself to go out into the world and ask for things. And so when you think about it from like the perspective of like running up on strangers, and not even running up, but you know what I mean, like taking up that more space in that more public context, I'm interested to see what you think of that.
So it's funny how this comes about. Unbeknownst to me, I've been doing this 100-day rejection challenge for the last 5 years.
Oh, shout out.
The life of an entrepreneur is that of constant rejection. Yo, I cannot stress that enough. How constant we face rejection. Me and you recently just pitched for some cash to be able to help out some kids. What did they say to us, Miles?
No. They actually
Me and
said,
you,
"Do you have any cash?" They asked us for cash.
you
It'd be
say
like
too
that
much.
sometimes.
You say too much. But here's another point, right? With our first outing as a group, we spent so much time putting together this perfect pitch for this large company for an idea that we thought was super strong and could help a bunch of children. What was their response to us?
The response was no.
It was no, and these things happen so often, man. And so one thing that I like to tell people when it comes to the conventional growth, right? I don't like the therapist says not to be afraid of the word success because it's all determined by how you define it. So what would be conventionally seen as the success that I've been able to have in this particular field, it is completely lined with rejection. And one thing that I tell people often is that you need to get a very comfortable relationship with failure. You need to get a comfortable relationship with rejection. We work in many groups together. I always say this idea is not good enough until we start facing failures quickly. We need to fail quickly. I say we need to fail quickly. We need to fail quickly. Good entrepreneurs know that you have to fail. It's fail fast, grow quick. Fail fast, grow quick. That is the algorithm of success. Fail fast, grow quickly. So when I'm thinking about this rejection thing, and how I've been able to interpret it in how I do it, but there is no success without a very warm feeling with rejection. They said no to us. We jumped off that phone, laughed about it, learned from that situation, and then pushed over to the next thing. That's because we've had that exposure. So in the context of the things that we do in our professional life, I think that is important. And a lot of people who are also applying for jobs right now, I know a lot of our audience are young people who are applying for jobs and are getting these rejection letters. And I speak to a lot of people who are just down, just beat, just man. They say no, they say no. Hey, 98% of applications are no. 98% of applications are no. It's not a personal thing, but like rejection and failure is the road. It's not part of the road. It is the road.
Mm.
Learn
I
to love that shit.
I think that's really true, right? Especially in an entrepreneurial sense where you're putting yourself on front street for whatever opportunities you're going for. But I think in the ways that maybe that has molded like you, I want to look to you to think like what about somebody who, or maybe was there a time when that was more difficult for you, right? Because now you in these boardrooms and you don't care who else is in them. You know what I'm saying? You got the shirt open, hamburger meat, gold chains, letting them know that this is your arena too. That you're comfortable in these spaces. You know what I'm saying? And that's beautiful. That's a wonderful thing. But I would love to hear about maybe some of the times when you were walking into that space and you or even not even necessarily that space, but like where you had to face that fear of rejection. Matter of fact, what's your biggest rejection? All right, we talked about one that was in a business sense, and that's cool, right? We can still build from there. Actually, the best things in
Oh,
business come from relationships, so we have the ability to move on from that. But hit me with a rejection that really hurt you before you was good at dealing with it.
ow, ow.
The vulnerable are
I-
powerful in this space, man. Come on.
church, church. I mean, it's definitely relationship related, right?
Okay.
Relationship related. Something that I had to learn difficult way, as a lot of young men who are trying to understand themselves learn, is I was rejected by somebody who I loved, is what it was.
Mm. Whoa, you went
And
there.
I was rejected by somebody I love.
You in these waters now? Play a swim.
No, but the funny thing I learned about that rejection is that you can you sometimes as men we we mourn the we mourn the ability to be able to the option of having a woman. We mourn the option of having a woman, and
Mm.
that was the rejection that I faced. Somebody that wasn't speaking to whatever, and I was, hey girl, I still love you, and she's like, nah, and she left. And it was the loss of that option that was just so gut wrenching, and it turned me into an animal.
Yes, indeed, it has. Thank you, Mister the Animal. We appreciate your testimony here on the All the Way Live experience.
So, what about
What?
you, Mr. Smooth?
Uh, I mean, no kizzy. I really wanted to go to a school on the West Coast out there that shall not be named. That I really thought like that was the great look for me in terms of my high school transition, and the school told me no. Right, I was gonna say the universe told me no, but let's keep it a being. The school was like, "Nah, player," and that like I was really in the moment I saw myself only, I saw it only as a loss, right? I saw it only as like all the things I wouldn't be able to do out west, you know what I'm saying? The weather, just everything that's out there. And it was the one of the best things that's ever happened to me, right? It put me on this path now to it put me on this path, not to Drake about it, not to Drake about it, but it put me on this path now to where I'm at, right? Chicago is where I needed to be. I didn't go far for school. I ended up going to UIUC. So to be back in the city was exactly where I needed to be. And sometimes I think even in that relationship, there's part of that, the moral, if there is one of that story, is like sometimes you're not ready for the things that you want. And so sometimes rejection is a indication that you need to work on yourself. You need to get to a place, not necessarily to go and achieve that thing, but you need to work on yourself more so that when you have the opportunity to have something that makes you as happy as that thing that you felt rejected by, you're able to deal with having it or not having it in a way that's mature and then stable for you. I think part of that, maybe not so much in the relationship aspect that you were just talking about, or the university aspect that I was just talking about, because in those cases, it was us. We was the problem. You know what I'm saying? We didn't have the credentials in whatever case to carry forward from that point. But a lot of times, rejection is not about you. I think that's another key thing here. It's like no matter like in across relationships or business or whatever, a lot of times there are other factors at play. Sometimes maybe it's that you're not being heard. Sometimes it's maybe that it's not the right time. Sometimes it's maybe that the connection that you're trying to make is just it's not the right one and you can't see the reasons why. But a lot of times it's not about you. And I think a lot of us internalize and personalize, like Drake, the rejections that we feel, and sometimes that is the part that spills out in a way that's unhealthy. Because when we feel like we're not enough, when we feel like the rejection is a result of who we are as a person, it does prohibit us from doing additional things, and it also affects the way we treat people and see other people who are successful and whatever they're doing.
Wow. That's very powerful, bro, because what you're speaking of now is a very heightened and enlightened way of seeing the world, right? When you are in tune with the universe and you believe that everything is not happening to you, but is happening for you, then there's no such thing as a rejection that is personalized. But then ingrained in each rejection is an opportunity of growth. It is ingrained in it, like and that's like you said, a chance to be able to learn even more. So a cool way of being able to approach it that has helped me a lot is being very inquisitive about rejection and treating rejection as feedback, and really wanting to understand it. One of the things that we did after this huge, and mind you, this deal that we're working on to get through the first, the one we're working through, would have been massive for us. It would have been massive for us, right? It would have really changed. It was big deal for us.
And for
Zeros
the
on
kids,
zeros,
that's why I'm hurt.
bro. Zeros on zeros on zeros, right? But how we approached is that we wanted to know, like, okay, what is it about what we're doing that can be better? How can we get better about it? And separating ourselves and treating that as a chance of learning how to get better in it. A fun fact: when you internalize rejection and you visualize it prior to an action, your IQ levels drop. So by personalizing rejection, your IQ actually drops, which is why a lot of people amidst rejection are prone to be able to act and make these terrible decisions. We know a lot of times when women reject men after walking, what do they say to them? A whole bunch of epithets and slurs that follow right after, right? Not justifying it, but it's the reality that by by personalizing rejection, you lower your IQ levels. What you said was extremely enlightened, man. And I hope that folks that are listening can really take that to heart and realize that and realize that just by altering how you view rejection, you can grow from it in an incredible way. Where I'm at with it, I love it. I love it. I face it every bro. I cannot stress enough. I cannot stress enough how important a healthy relationship with failure is to success. It is fundamental to it. It's absolutely fun. Daily, 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 daily. It happens.
You heard it here first, folks. Fail up. You got it. But I appreciate you, brother. Gratitude. Yeah, one thing that I came across, like, just a catchy way to say it that stuck with me as I was looking for research through this topic was like, we got to depersonalize no. I think that's cool, right? And connecting it to some of the other things that we've talked about on this podcast, including like the curriculums that we saw from Freedom and Balance last week. I think what's being created here is like one version of a curriculum to depersonalize no, right? Rejection therapy is a way to do that. I don't know about going on little shenanigans and adventures in your neighborhood. I live in the hood, so I wouldn't suggest that around here. You might get more rejection than you bargained for. But think about little ways. Think about little ways to expose yourself to that rejection in ways that can build you up. Opportunities that you might not have otherwise taken, but also not brace yourself, but secure yourself, ground yourself in the knowledge that you are enough, and that if you do get rejected, it's not always about you.